Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Excelcast. I'm your host, Joe Parker, and today I have Danny Beck. Danny,
What's
how are
going
you
on,
doing
brother?
today, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me
So,
on.
yeah, dude, absolutely. So, if you just want to get started by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are right now.
Yeah, so I'm from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, a familiar place to you.
Yeah.
So I grew up, went to Central Dauphin High School, and really was involved in like the media stuff there. And then I wanted to go to do that same thing in college. So I went to California University of Pennsylvania. It's a really small school, just south of Pittsburgh. And I chose to go to that small school because of the opportunity that they had at that school that they offered their students in the media kind of world. And there I was able to mess with the newspaper. I was editor in chief of the newspaper. I had my own radio show, and I was on TV all the time. So that kind of allowed me to dip my feet into a bunch of different things. I applied for an internship with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2019. Uh, got the internship with the Buccaneers. Was there for about like a month, and I've been there ever since. Turned into a full-time job. So that got me here. But it was really those stepping stones that led to this point.
Yeah. So, how has your experience been with the Buccaneers? I mean, that's a huge role, a huge, jump in your career going from, Cal U to you know, living down in Tampa Bay and being a part of the
Right.
Buccaneers. So, how has that experience been for you?
It's been absolutely unreal. I mean, I came here, like I said, in 2019, and that was the last year of Jameis Winston. And then 2020, then Tom Brady came into town, and everybody was like, Tampa was the epicenter of all things sports. I mean, the Lightning were going off. The Rays were also, they went to the World Series. It was really the hub of sports. And and then we ended up winning a Super Bowl, my second season in the NFL. So it was like just crazy. But in terms of opportunity, like I've had nothing but great opportunity to this point. I kind of worked up the ranks. I've been able to shoot different things, going to the combine, going to multiple times, going to just playoff games all over the place. Lambeau Field, which was a huge bucket list check off for me. Just all these different opportunities that kind of allowed me to kind of flex that muscle in the NFL.
Yeah, man. I mean, I know that you said, in the interview that you wanted to be in sports your whole life and you kind of
Mhm.
like always had that desire and that focus and desire specifically being your word. Um, how did the desire for wanting to be in sports formulate itself into, what you do right now?
Yeah, and I think when I chose desire, when I was looking up the word and like all the research and all that stuff, I think desire for me, exactly what you were saying, like that pursuit of one goal, like that desire to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
And I think that formed everything that I did. That pushed me to all the late nights and all of um, the long hours at work, all those different things. It was because I wanted to one get to that point, to this point where I am now, but also stay at that point and not like lose that focus or lose that drive or that itch to keep wanting to be better. And I think that's what allowed me to get to this point and allowed me to stay at this point in my job. So, and it allows me to kind of like help other people too. If other people want to come up through the ranks, like it sounds corny, but like this is what you have to do. These are the steps that you have to do to achieve it. So it's just always trying to scratch that itch of wanting to kind of achieve more and to do more.
Yeah. And what you said too is really resonating with me to be able to maintain. That's something that, you know, I didn't realize that I had to do. Like, specifically, my big thing in my life is my weight loss, right? 125 pounds, 6 months, 21 days.
Wild.
But it's afterwards. And I had a friend one time say to me, he was like, dude, like, you were motivated until you hit 125 down, but now you have to be disciplined. So it
Yep.
changes to a whole different thing because you're motivated when you have a goal, to make it to the NFL, right? You're
Mhm.
motivated. But now that you're there, you have to be disciplined, or not to the NFL, but to be in
No,
sports, right?
yeah,
Now
absolutely,
you have to
absolutely.
be disciplined because now that you made it, you can't be like, I made it
Just
and
relax.
sit
Yep,
back. No,
yep,
now you have to go even harder to an extent, right?
yep,
Now you
yep.
have to, start building upon the discipline and the motivation that you had. Now you have to bring things in from all different facets and kind of build a different mindset when it comes to that. So I really appreciate you saying that because not a lot of people get that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something also that you touched on in there is the fact that you're learning all of those skills to be motivated. You're learning all
Yeah.
those different things. You're kind of whether it was listening to podcasts or listening to motivation, reading books. I mean, all of those different things that helped you get motivated when you're after you reach your goals, after you reach that kind of highest peak, then you can still use those things that you use to get to that point and just use them in a different way, right? Like it's just like maintaining that positive mindset. So you can still be goal driven, you still want to achieve one thing, but it's just
Yeah.
maintenance. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So how have you done that? What are some specific things that you've done that goals within, because you have one main goal, right? To be in
Mhm.
sports.
Yeah.
What are different goals that you built upon that you're still trying to achieve now?
In terms of, I'm more so thinking of like long term career type goals. So
Okay.
I started off as an intern, right? And I've seen this on my resume and kind of updating my resume as it goes on. Like I was an intern with the Penguins when I was still in school. And then after that, that turned into a full time job. And then I got this internship with the Bucks, and then that turned into a full time job. So it's just like all those different things, those um, different steps of the ladder, rungs of the ladder, if you will. It's just like trying to keep climbing that ladder. So my next goal after I got the full time job with the Bucks was senior producer. So
Yeah.
I worked and I worked and I worked and all those late night hours or late hours and the long hours, all those different things, and allowed me to get that senior producer role. So now I'm looking back, and I think something that I learned from a lot of other people was turning around after you reach that peak. It's like turning around and helping other people climb that ladder. It's like almost like dropping down a rope and just bringing everybody else with you. So I think for me, it's helping those around me. It's helping those, whether it's an intern or whether it's another producer or whether it's people from my high school or my college that I had a relationship with, and I'm like, any way that I can help you, if I can put a recommendation in for you, if I can do all those different things, it's just trying to bring up the people that are around me. I still think that I haven't reached the full potential of where I want to go, and I'm still working towards that. It's just flexing those muscles and kind of learning different skills, watching a lot of YouTube videos. That's like the one thing that I always am doing is kind of gathering information from other people, and so I don't know. I think that my biggest goal right now is just kind of bringing up those that are around me.
Yeah. And I love that because that is not initially, like me personally, it's not initially why I wanted to lose weight, like with my journey specifically. But now when I see other people in the gym that are bigger, I'm like, yo, keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Because then once you get there, you're like, wow, like I wish I had someone like me.
Right.
Like, let me be that person for that
Right.
person. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so I really like that. I like that your goal right now is to look back and to help others get to where you are.
Absolutely.
Because I forget who said it. There was some motivational video that I watched.
Mm-hmm.
It spoke about you're only as good, like if you want to do something, help someone else do it,
Yep.
and that'll help you do it.
Yep.
Because if you're giving someone else advice, you're subconsciously giving yourself advice.
Yep.
So if,
Exactly. Yep.
yeah,
Yep. Yep.
yeah,
I like that a lot. I saw that recently. I saw that with somebody that was like, if you're trying to make $1 million, you help somebody else make $1 million, and then
yeah,
both you guys both have $2 million. So it's like if you help somebody else achieve the same goals that you want to, then you
yeah,
only are bettering not only yourself, but you're also bettering that other person. So like that carries more weight, I think.
yeah. And it's someone else to feed off of because if they're
Yep.
going after it with you, then you can bounce ideas off of them, and you're
Yep.
not just like, nope, this is me. I'm on this narrow path, this narrow
Yep.
focused, and I don't want to talk to. But if you're like, yo, like, oh, we're in this together. Plus, it gives you a sense of community. If you're like, oh,
Exactly.
we're all trying to achieve better things. We're all trying to be better. We're all trying to achieve our goals and things like that. And it's it creates a certain energy, and it all starts with you when you do that.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
You're at the center of it. And I think like the goal driven stuff, I think it pushes everybody forward, right? Like you're saying, like your sense of community.
yeah,
The gym community is one of those things that I think there's parts
huge.
that are a little toxic. There's definitely parts that are a little toxic, but that's in everything. But the places that aren't toxic, the people that do push each other, you
Yeah,
see how much that impacts other people. So if that can be, you know, applied into different communities or different job areas, or all those different things. It can just help other people just achieve their goals and be better human beings at the end of the day.
Yeah, man. It's the gym community specifically. I used to be so head down, like head
Mhm.
down, hat on. I'm not talking to you. I'm not looking at you. And it wasn't
Right.
like a bad thing. I just wanted to
Hmm.
get in, get my workout done, and that be it. Because I was so
Yep.
focused on just being fit, being healthy, whatever it may be. But
Hmm.
I realized that now that I'm starting to grow my gym network and I'm starting to talk to people a little bit more,
Hmm.
it's better for me because whenever I go in there, I'm excited to go in there. I'm happy to see the people that that I usually see at the gym.
Right.
You know, and then they know more people. Then I find out different things about them. And
Right.
then I also, you know, there's some people in there that I get to have on my podcast, and they're like,
Yep.
"Oh, actually, like they tell me stories." I'm like, "Wow, that's crazy. I would have never known that had I
Right.
not taken the time to talk to you."
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah, it's important to branch yourself out in networking, and specifically, how has networking helped you, in your journey?
I think that's the biggest an asset, biggest tool that you can have in your tool belt
Yeah,
is being a good networker. If that's even a word, networker, I have no idea.
you made it
But
up if it's not. There you
that's
go.
what it is. So like in this stuff, like starting out with the whole videos type of thing, it really is about who you know, and it is finding different people's stories, because everybody has a unique story, right? So it's trying to build those relationships early on, and kind of not necessarily use them, but almost just like leveraging that relationship that you have built to turn it into something that can kind of help you down the line. So like always asking people questions, always lending a helping hand for somebody, all those different things that can help you in the long run. It's also becoming you're a better employee when you do that, right? If you're at the end of the day, you're like, oh, 5 o'clock hits, I'm gonna head out. It's like, oh, 5 o'clock hits, I want to talk to this person, or I'm helping this person with something. It's just going that extra mile to kind of build those relationships, and that'll turn into a job opportunity. Or like, I want to go back up to Pittsburgh eventually in a few years. So it's like my internship that I had in Pittsburgh. I'm constantly communicating with those people. I'm constantly trying to build that bridge of communication, so that later on, it's not like I'm hitting them up and just being like, "Hey, like, got a job?" You know what I mean? Like, it's having those conversations throughout. I don't know, the last 3 or 4 years that I've been down here. And now when they come down to see the lightning play, they're hitting me up like, "Hey, dude, you want to come to a game?" Or like, "Hey, dude, you want to help me out with this?" All those different things is just about relationship building, and networking can help you achieve those goals.
Yeah. And I think that especially in your specific circumstance, having that long-term plan of knowing that you want to go back to Pittsburgh
Mhm.
has helped you been like, okay, well, if I want to go back to Pittsburgh, then I need to maintain these relationships
Yep.
because that at the end of the day is my goal. Um, and like you said too, it's not using people.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's using people. It's just like you're in my network. There's opportunities that you have, and people I find 9 times out of 10 are really, really happy to help you. Like
Hmm.
they're happy to help you.
Yeah.
So, that specific, I don't think that plays a huge role because,
Hmm.
you're happy to help people, right? If people have a
Yep.
relationship with you and
Yep.
they're like, hey, like, can you write me a letter of recommendation? You're immediately
Hmm.
like, yeah, I absolutely can.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that it's important to keep those relationships and it's important to, leverage those things in your favor.
Yeah, and I think
Um,
like a lot of people are, like networking is huge. Networking is huge. Like always network. And I think social media these days is one of those opportunities that you can really connect with people.
yeah,
Whether it's literally just liking somebody's story, or if it's commenting on somebody's post, DMing somebody, all those different things that I think for a lot of people before, we kind of not necessarily took for granted, but I don't think that a lot of people would use that in that way. I think that it was a lot about connection. It was a lot about, talking to your friends or all those different things. But now I'm seeing social media kind of being turned. So it's you're posting your work, especially in the video world. It's you're
yeah,
posting your work, you're interacting with other people, you're collaborating with people's posts, you're doing all those things to put yourself out there, and then that's in turn turning around, and it's making business for you, or if it's creating opportunities for you because people see your work constantly. as consistent as you can, obviously.
Yeah.
They're seeing it on social media and they're being like, oh, I know what he can do. I know what they can do. Like all those different things. And then that turns into an opportunity. So whether it's communicating with somebody or just putting yourself out there, I think networking is a universal language that I think a lot of people can take advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also feel like what you said, like the little things on Instagram, like commenting,
Mhm.
liking a story, liking a post. Um, I've noticed that when I start doing that more, my networking starts to build.
Yep.
So, I've met a lot of people over LinkedIn, over, Instagram, things like that. Just DMing people like, hey, I got this podcast. Would you like to do it? Now, obviously, I
Yep.
met you through Andrew. He
Right.
recommended you to come on the podcast, but people that I don't even know. I just,
That's still networking though. Exactly
yeah,
what you're saying. That's still networking.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. I would DM like people that you know famous people because
Yep.
Instagram allows that access now. You can do that if you want to, and the
Yep.
worst they can do is say absolutely not. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
So, social media is a huge tool in growing your connections and trying to network with people the best way that you can. LinkedIn's huge as well, but I think Instagram is kind of like the new LinkedIn or the new
Mhm.
Facebook. It's very versatile when it comes to reels, posts, DMs, everything like that.
No
And
question.
it's very simple. It's a little more simpler than Facebook is.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, how
More
has
user
networking
friendly.
helped you? Like social media networking
So
specifically?
that's one thing that I think I need to get better with.
Yeah.
I don't do it too much. We have a social media policy at our work that we can't post stuff if
Mm,
the main account doesn't post it, and which is very healthy. I mean, that's one of those things that if we're only looking out for ourselves. But
yeah.
anyways, um, so I haven't been able to really put together a bunch of different things on social media. But what I do is I'll just communicate or I will interact with a lot of people's posts that I use as inspiration or that I have a relationship with. I have those kind of friendly bonds with, whether it was from work or just admiring them from afar on social media. Um, I don't think it has really I don't have any opportunities that have came out of social media networking
Yeah.
in terms of like friendships and different work relationships, all those different things. Probably, I probably built my base a little bit, but I haven't had any opportunities come out of social media specifically. Which
Yeah.
I don't know, good or bad thing. It is what it is, right? Like
Yeah.
I see people on social media that they're posting 3 times a day and they have a job, right?
Yeah.
And they're posting 3 times a day of just their work. And I love that. Like that's so cool. But like
Yeah.
you have to basically be that's like 2 jobs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're posting your own work, you're cutting your own work for your benefit. And I don't know. I think I could be a little bit better in that regard in terms of not only interacting with other people, trying to seek out opportunities, but also just putting myself out there. I know I'm kind of speaking out of both sides of my mouth and saying like you need to do it, and then I'm not doing it. But like it's I see that it's beneficial, and I see that that's an opportunity. That's just something that I've kind of saw as an opportunity, and I need to kind of leverage that for myself.
Yeah, especially you're in a position right now where you may need to do different things, right? Than someone who's up and coming, someone
Right,
who needs to get that position, which I feel
right,
like that's when social media is huge. Like
Mhm.
growing your network, meeting the right people, and then getting jobs that you need. You're in a position right now where you have a great job with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you know that you want to come back to Pittsburgh, and you know those people. So you have the two, points that you need and that you want in your life. So maybe growing your network isn't necessarily your goal right now, but enriching the network that you already have is your
Oh yeah,
goal. Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I really like that. I mean, I think back to when I was starting out, like what you were saying. I looked up on. I wanted to work in the NFL. I didn't care what I was doing in the NFL. So I went on to every team's website and just looked up their communications coordinator. And before when I went to school, I was a little confused what I wanted to do. So communications means public relations in the NFL. So I was looking up communications people and was going to the team website and was just finding their email or just I know their first and last name, so I was trying to figure out like the formula of how their email will be set up for the NFL. It was really low level stuff, but it was like if somebody's name was Danny Beck, it would be dbeck@buccaneers.nfl.com. Cool. I know that that's one team's format. It's like I'm just going to go along and do that. So I looked up a bunch of different people and I just typed their email in. I sent my resume to them, sent a little blurb about myself, sent about like what I want to do, and I got a few hits back. But the hits that I got back were more like, "Hey, we really appreciate you reaching out. Your intern or your resume doesn't really reflect what this position would be for. I'd be glad to pass your information along." Awesome. That's all I wanted to do. All I
Yeah.
needed. Like, if it wasn't, I could have emailed the janitor at the NFL. Like, doesn't matter if they pass my information along. That's all I wanted.
Yeah.
Um, so this opportunity that I got with the Bucks wasn't related to any of that. I actually just applied to the Bucks internship, but now I know and I have a relationship, a loose relationship, not like a when I see them, I'm like, hey, what's going on? Like I know these people's names in the NFL, and I don't really cross paths with them too much. But like when we were just in New York for we were practicing at the Giants facility. A few people there. I wanted to work at the Giants. That was my favorite team growing up, so I wanted
Yeah.
to work at the Giants. And so I knew some of the people's names. I knew some of their faces that were there. It's just kind of just trying to put yourself out there right off the bat, even if you're in the wrong. I don't know if you're in the wrong, but like if you're misguided as to what you want to do, what's the quote? If you shoot for the stars, you'll land. If you shoot for the moon, you'll land in the stars, whatever
There
it
it
is.
is. Yep.
So like, cool. If you have that main goal, just get there. Just get up there and you'll figure it out when you get up there.
Yeah.
I think something that I kind of have learned is nobody knows what they're doing. Like everybody's just kind of just moving through life. Nobody has it all figured out. So if at the beginning, if you just put yourself out there, if you just do what you want to do, then you'll figure it out eventually. And that's kind of I don't want to say I have it figured out right now, but I'm definitely at a spot where I feel comfortable, and it's because of all that work that I put in before.
Yeah. Knowing that you'll never have it figured out is
Mhm.
figuring it out in a sense, because you're like, if you're always learning and you're always prepared to learn, that is a key to always being prepared, because you're prepared to learn. You're not like, no, I know everything, I'm good. Because
Yep.
then when something, like Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan, everyone's good till they get punched in the mouth. But if
Yep.
you're always ready to get punched in the mouth, you're good.
Right.
I specifically I have a capstone class for my
Mhm.
master's program. It's like the last class. It's basically like, hey, do you know everything that we taught you?
Mhm.
It's a huge class. And my teacher in the class said, anyone can train anyone to do anything. It's all about who you know, and it's all about the conversations that you spark and how you impact those people that you have conversations with.
Uh-huh.
So I think networking is a huge part of that whole mindset, because
Absolutely.
networking itself it's key. It's all about who you know, especially in business and especially in things like that. If you're a freelancer, it's still about who you know. But if you're on
Oh yeah.
Fiverr or Upwork, it could be, what you do and people see it. They're like, okay, like I want to hire this person. But if you're
Mhm.
in any sort of business world, um, you know, like you're the senior producer, right? So you do creative work to an extent, but you're in the business, like you're with the Bucks, so you have to have that network. You're not a freelancer that's like, hey, here's my stuff, this is what I can do. If you
Right.
like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't.
Right.
So I think knowing people is definitely a huge thing. And speaking to your word desire as well, like that shows initiative when you reach out to someone and you're like, hey, like, you know I know you have no idea who I am, but here's my resume and I really want to work for you. Like,
Right.
I feel like people gravitate to that and they love that. And they're like, hey, this kid, like, how did he find my email? Like, that's
Yeah.
insane that
Exactly.
he even knows my email. Did this
Yep.
kid guess my email? You know what I mean? Like, at the
Yep.
time.
Yep.
And that just shows that you have the ability to be like, this is what I want. And I'm going to do whatever it takes, even if it's guessing emails,
Yep.
to get the position that I want. And how was that experience? Did you ever get like any kickback? Like, hey man, like this is not the right email, like at all.
No, thankfully. I think that would have
Wow.
humbled me pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it was the wrong email, then it was still like an at NFL. So like it probably would have gone to nobody if it
Yeah.
was the wrong email. I think I probably got, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 responses
Yeah.
and 32 teams. Like that's a pretty good hit rate. I don't know. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think that I think, and also flipping the script now. So like where I'm at now in my position, if somebody did that for me, I would absolutely respond because of the
Yeah.
fact that like I know whether they know my email or whether they found my email somewhere along the lines. I know that I was in their shoes at one point, not that long ago. I mean, less than 5 years ago, I was in their point and or in their shoes. And I think then flipping the script and being like, oh no, like this is what they're doing. I know the mindset that you have in terms of what you want to get to your goals. And like, of course, I'll help them out. Like you were saying, like, yeah, I'll write a letter of recommendation. Maybe not for somebody in that spot. I'd have to have a
Yeah.
relationship with you if I'm going to write a recommendation. But like, um, I know that kind of that mindset you have to be in that position to even put yourself out there like that. And
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. You'll pass the information along, just like those people
yep,
did for you. You'll be like, hey, like,
yep,
maybe I look at your resume, maybe I'm like, I can't hire you, but maybe someone else can. Like, you
right,
do anything just to be
exactly,
like, hey, let me help this person along. Let me help them, along their journey. And knowing where you've been, I feel like is a very good thing to have knowledge of,
absolutely,
hey, I've been in this position before. I'm not all that I am right now, um, and I've been to that place. So you're like, hey, like I've emailed people before. I've done that where I emailed and I sent it out and I haven't got responses, and that's made me feel awful. So whenever someone, not awful maybe, but you're like,
yeah,
damn, all
yeah,
right.
yeah,
But
rejection, yeah,
yeah. But when people email you, you're like, well, I know that I did not like that feeling. So I'm gonna make sure that they feel good and not bad.
exactly,
And if you don't have knowledge of where you started, it's kind of hard to do that. So it's good that you know
absolutely,
that.
yeah. And I think something too is just like opportunities, like
Yeah,
what you were saying with like I know where you were. There's a bunch of different people in this field that have been to big D1 programs and they've worked at these big organizations and all those different things. But like I'm kind of an advocate for the people that make it out of the little opportunities because of the
yeah,
fact that my school had 8,000 people, maybe a little bit more with outside whatever. It had 8,000 people, one stoplight, super small town. But I used that opportunity, the little opportunity that I had in terms of working in all these different fields to leverage that opportunity into the opportunity that I have now. And I think that's something that just taking advantage of every opportunity, um, you know, always being ready so you don't have to get ready. It's knowing how to kind of navigate those opportunities so that when you get to that big stage or you get to that dream job or you get to that ideal position that you want to be at, you've kind of had that opportunity to really just experience that feeling in that moment so that when you're at that big moment, it's just kind of another day of work. It's just another thing that you have to do.
yeah, yeah. And I remember specifically when we were talking about when you first started, like at your school,
Mhm.
that you were doing a lot of announcing and a lot of like
Yep.
interviewing, and now your role has kind of changed from that. But
Right.
are there any like crossovers that you brought with you from those, those two main tasks that you had that you now bring into your senior producing role?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's formulating a lot of like how you want to approach different, whether it's a person or whether it's an athlete, whatever it is. It's all about communication, really.
Yeah,
At the core of it, it's I announced for a bunch of different sports, but I always was. It taught me a lot about research too. Going into an interview, I still have to research the person. I'm interviewing some people now with the Bucks, and that research thing that I was allowed to, or that I was able to kind of study, look things up, doing research that's not just the high level, like, oh, how was your family life, or like all those different things. Like it's talking about an opportunity that, oh, when you were a wide receiver at your college, you were third string. How did that like kind of teach you to carry that mindset into the next level? Or when you got to that wide receiver one role, what were you able to do that you learned from the wide receiver three? All those different things that I think it was just research was one thing that I took off. took out of that. And radio shows, it's all about being prepared. TV, the same thing, just knowing what you're going to say before you say it, so it doesn't come out jumbled, or you come out expressing yourself in the way that you want to express yourself, and not just word vomiting everything out there. It's just kind of being calm, confident, and collected in those moments that allows you to kind of just display yourself in the way that you want to be displayed.
Yeah, I think research is huge. And specifically to your point about research, I think that plays a huge role in your desire, because when you desired to know, or when you desired to, have a role with the Bucks and have a role in sports, you did all your research, looking up how they structure their emails. Even you're
Yep.
like, how
Yep.
would this email be like? And so I feel like research is a huge thing, when it comes to your desire. And were you ever, when did that play like a huge role, like research specifically? Were you like, hey, like this is what you have to do now? Like, was there a turning point for you where you were like, I can't do it this way anymore, I have to do it this way now?
Yeah, I think that obviously, if I wanted to have that ideal, I wanted to have that goal at the end
Yeah.
of achieving working in the NFL. So it's like whatever I had to do. So I kind of learned that in terms of like the email looking up stuff. So my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, she was just like, I'm sure that this is how they set up their emails. And I was like writing out different things that it could be. And so I would like send out a few and then be like, I didn't get any responses. I'd wait a week. I'd look up a different way to, instead of like writing their first and last name, I would just be the first initial and their last name at Buccaneer, whatever. And so I think that allowed me to kind of stay on the grind, if that makes sense. I don't know. It's a really weird way to like formulate that sentence of being like, oh, looking up a person's email is staying on the grind. Um, but no, so I think that I think research went into it because of my desire. I think that I identified that my end goal was working in the NFL. So I would do anything to get to that spot. I was looking at what other teams were doing, sideline reporting, and I would use that to my advantage to, if I was a sideline reporter at my school, I knew going into it, this is how the pros do it. This is how
Yeah.
I'm also going to do that. Because if
Yeah.
you can imitate greatness sometimes, but then you have to curve your own path or carve your own path. And that's what I was allowing my personality to shine through. I was building these relationships so that when I went out there and I interviewed somebody on the sideline, I was composed enough to be having a conversation. It wasn't just asking them questions and then cool, let's go back up. It was like you're having a conversation with somebody. End of the game, how did it feel? How did it make you feel? What were some of the emotions? All those different things that allowed this person to be a human. But it's because I was researching, I was creating relationships, I was creating bonds, and that turned into good content, or that turned into a compelling broadcast. All those different things. It helped me to kind of leverage my personality into just opportunities.
Yeah. I think it's Stephen A. Smith says, I'm great because I know I'm not, and
Yep.
I imitate people who are, or he says something along those lines.
Stephen A
But
has some quotes, bro. He has some
yeah,
he got some
yeah,
quotes.
absolutely. I think he said, and I steal from those who are,
Yeah.
because those who have made it, they are an example, a walking, talking example of how you get to where you're at or where you want to be.
Right.
And I feel like, especially with your email, I feel like I'm harping on the emails because,
Nah,
like,
yeah.
dude, that is such an out of the box idea to be
Right.
like, let me try to formulate. Like, your desire was so great that you're like,
Uh-huh.
let me try to think of how they made up their email. Like,
Yep.
your desire was so, like, you were so keen on getting a role in the NFL that it's just something that I personally would not think of, and it
Yeah.
ended up working for you in your benefit.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that's it was it ended up being a great idea.
Yeah. It was, and I think that it would have been cooler, I guess, if it turned into like an actual job, like right off
Yeah.
the bat for me. I did definitely create some relationships. One of our interns before, I think it was 2 years ago, um, her brother was one of the people that I emailed, and I told her about this story like when she was here, and she was like, "Oh, that's wild. He never really told me about that." And I was like, "Well, he probably didn't tell you about it because it was such a minuscule thing that happened."
Yeah.
But I was just like, it's that relationship that I was kind of like, oh wait, I know, like I emailed this person a long time ago, like whatever, and then like we're both in the NFL, whatever. It's one of those things where it would have been cooler if it turned into like an actual opportunity, but
Yeah.
just getting myself out there, whether they got my information to somebody and it turned into a role, that's above my head. That was God made that happen.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things that it was different out of the box, but I feel like that's what you got to do sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like sometimes, especially with that, like God will watch you put in that work and he'll do things in the background, even though he's like, what you're doing right now may not exactly help you out,
Follow that
but
plan. Yeah.
the ripple effect, like, I got you. It'll come back
Yeah.
around. And
Absolutely. And I'm
yeah,
I'm not a huge religious person. I grew up Jewish and Catholic, so I was kind of confused in that regard.
yeah,
But I think there's always somebody, like what you're saying, there's always somebody up there that's watching over you, that's holding your hand, or that's showing you right from wrong. And I think that's something that I've definitely learned over the years. And like I put in all this effort, and it definitely, it'll turn out into an opportunity every once in a while, but like there's got to be somebody else up there that's pulling those strings, that's making it happen, with everything that we do.
yeah. I mean, I feel like the higher power, I call it God personally. Whatever
Mhm.
anyone else calls it is what they call it.
Right.
But I feel like when you're putting in those hours, right, you're doing those emails, even though nothing's coming of those emails, that holding your hand, that higher power, he goes, all right, like I see you working. I see you working. Let me go over here and put this idea in this person's head because you're
Yep.
grinding. And then it's gonna come this way. The
Yep.
gift, it's gonna come around. It's not gonna come directly to what you're doing, but
Right.
because you're putting in that work, I'm gonna do this thing where it's gonna come back around and you're gonna benefit from it. And
Absolutely.
I feel like that sometimes when people are grinding specifically on one thing and it's not working, they quit because they don't have faith that it's going to loop around in
Yep.
whatever way it loops around. So I think it's very important to maintain that faith and maintain that grind, even if it's not directly working out. Like you need to have that wider perspective.
Yeah. And I think like that can be applied to your situation, your position. It's like, what was that last video, or what was that last podcast, or that last book that you watched, that you read, that you listened to, that you were like, I'm gonna flip a switch and I'm gonna get into the gym.
Yeah,
It's the gym, I think, is the biggest example of that, right? It's you're going to the gym for 2 hours sometimes a day, if you're going to whatever long gym sessions, right?
yeah,
You don't get back and look in the mirror and be like, dang, I look sick. Like this is the way I want to
yeah.
look. You don't do that. So
Nope.
it's, if you're going to put in that effort, you're going to put in that grind. You have to consistently put in that grind, because then it'll turn out into looking into the mirror 125 pounds down and being like, this is where I want to be. This is where I want to
Yeah,
be right now. But I mean, like every position, it's like, cool, you stay at work for 12 hours. The next time the sun comes up, if you don't do the same thing, that was for nothing. Like you have to
yeah,
consistently put that effort in, going to the gym, staying consistent with your eating, staying consistent with, I don't know, just putting in an effort and being a good human being. If you don't do that, you slip up one time, then all that's for naught.
yeah. Absolutely. It's about, and what you said with if you don't stick to it, it's for nothing. That's exactly what it is. Because if you say I lost 125 pounds and the next day I started eating cake and fried food immediately and just was like,
Yep.
oh, well, I lost 125 pounds. I'm going to ride that wave. I'm going to ride that out. Like that story out. Like, oh, yeah, I once lost 125. It's like, great. It looks like you put on another 100.
Exactly.
What do you,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yep.
Where's there's no inspiration without discipline. I
Yep.
feel like, because if you achieve something, that's fantastic. But if you don't maintain that, it's lost. Like you could be like,
Yep.
oh, I became, the senior producer. Like you could be at 7-Eleven being like, oh, I was once the senior producer for the Bucks. And
Yep.
not that 7-Eleven's bad, like, but
No,
it's not.
people are like, cool. What are you doing now?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. And it's all
yeah.
about what you're doing currently. Are
Yep.
you improving yourself currently? Are you trying to be a better version of yourself currently? And I
Yep.
feel like that's very important. The maintenance, the desire gets you there,
Mhm.
but you need to maintain the desire once you get there, because if not, it's really going to be lost.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, this is just like a small thing I would say, but like you look at all these former athletes that had all this money, all this success, all this fame, all this fortune, all the nicest cars, all that stuff, and then if they let it get to their
Yeah.
head, and then they're on the streets. It's like trying to maintain that lifestyle in a negative way can impact you in the long run. But it's if you're maintaining that positive outlook and getting to that point where you're not quite comfortable, but you're at that point where you're like, this is I know what I have to do. I know what I have to put in the work with, and you get to that part where you're like, cool, this is my kind of like even keel with this entire thing. But I don't know. I think recently it was an NBA player that I think he played on the Cavs with LeBron or played on somebody with another team, and he was decent, like he was good. Was it Delonte West?
Mm.
Is that who it was? Did you see that on social
I'm
media?
I'm not. I don't know. I'm
I
not
think it was
too
Delonte
keen on
West.
that realm.
I want to say it was him, and people like just like took pictures of him on the street, and he was like he looked homeless, right?
Yeah.
And people went up to him and was just like, "Hey, bro, like what's going on? Like what are you doing?" And he was homeless, and I think LeBron saw it and like took him in or like did stuff, gave him money, all these other things, and I think he's set up now. But it's these people that were at the peak of their athletic careers, and then they just like basically like fall back down that ladder, and it's
Yeah.
trying to stay on those rungs. So if you have to hold on, if you have to do whatever you have to do to stay up on that peak, but it's easy to fall down. It's easy to get out of that rhythm. It's easy to get out of that mindset that gets you back into that negative mindset.
Yeah. And I feel like hard work is huge. Not that people get like imposter syndrome, like, oh, I shouldn't be here, but I
Mhm.
feel like when people achieve something that great, like being in the NBA, and they never thought that they were going to be in the NBA,
Mhm.
they get a sense of imposter syndrome, and they want to like live it out like while they're
Mhm.
there, like, oh, this isn't me, so while I'm here, I'm in my dream, like my dream
Yeah.
job, I'm doing what I want to do, so I want to live it to the fullest. I want to buy nice cars, I want to, you know
Yep.
buy,
Entitlement. Yeah.
go
Yeah.
out, yeah, like I want to go out, I want to, you know do these amazing things, spend all this money, and then it's like, well, had you saved that, you would be all right, but because you had that imposter syndrome, you kind of like wasted it all. Like, act like you've been there. You know what I mean? Act like
Yep.
you're supposed to be here. I put in so much hard work that I should be here.
Right.
This was my goal. This was my dream. This is what I want to do. Like, imagine if you became the senior producer at the Bucks, and all you did was try to like talk to the players, and, oh, look at me, you know
Yep.
I,
Yep.
I'm hanging out with Tom Brady, and
Yep.
but you're not doing your job. Like, you're gonna lose
Right.
your job then. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So act like you're supposed to be there. Act
Yeah.
like you have a job to do. That's what I have to do. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's huge. That's huge. Being able to, having that mindset of, I'm supposed to be here, and through my hard work and dedication, I got here, and now I need to maintain it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something imposter syndrome is. I know you're framing it as in a negative way, but it's also like I have a sense of imposter syndrome where it's like I achieve this rank super quickly,
Yeah.
and there are moments where I look at other people and what other people are doing. If they worked in college athletics or if they worked in some other field for 5 or 10 years, and I just climb these ranks super fast, it's like I think that there has to have been something else that I'm doing or can be doing that allowed me to kind of get into that mental state. Um, but I think for me personally, it's like trying to listen to what you were saying. It's like I know the work that I put in here. I know what I can do, and I don't necessarily walk around the players and I'm like face like Instagramming live and all those different things. Like I don't do that,
Yeah.
and I don't really interact with players much at all. But it's more so of what you were saying. It's like act like you've been here before.
Yeah.
It's knowing that you have a job to do no matter what else is going on around you. It's like focusing in and being like, I know when I show up at work, if I'm showing up at a high school field, if I'm showing up at an NFL stadium, it's like I know that I have a job to do no matter what it is. And I'm going
Yeah.
to do it to the best of my ability. And if it's the best of my ability, I know that I put in the maximum effort that I can, and like nobody else can top that because mean, you just got to focus on yourself sometimes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very important thing. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that you know that, hey, I got a job to do. I have to
Right.
achieve it. Because having that focus is really important. Like we were talking about earlier, you need to maintain that focus through your desire.
Right.
And yeah, well, Danny, it was a pleasure having you on, man. Do you have a
Absolutely.
quote that you want to leave everyone with?
I do, yes. Yeah, and I came up with this one when I brought up the word desire. I was kind of like, what quotes go along with desire? And I think this one
Yeah,
resonated with me quite a bit for a few reasons, but I'll just read it out first. So it's do not spoil what you have by desiring what you have not. Remember that what you have was once among the things you only hoped for. So I think for me, when in this spot that I am now, it's easy to look on and be like, oh, I don't have this or I don't have that. But it's like where I am now, 5 years ago, I was like, I would kill to have that job. I would love
yeah,
to have that opportunity. I would love to be in that spot where I can have that role. So I think for me, it's just being humble. I think in the role that you have, or being humble in the spot that you are, so that you know I think it's just like knowing where your feet are. I think that's
yeah,
the biggest thing. It's like knowing where your feet are and knowing where your feet have been. It's
yeah,
knowing your spot now and not being complacent over where you were. Um, there's a few other things I can go on and talk about, like shoes. Like I'm a big shoe guy, so it's like
yeah,
I have all these shoes now, and 10 years ago I was like, dang, I wish I would have X, Y, and Z. And it's like that's in my closet now. But
yeah,
now I'm looking at ABC, and I'm like, I want those next. But it's like I know that how much I wanted those other things, material goods, right? But I
yeah,
know how much I wanted those things, and like now I have them, and I'm easily turning on being like, oh, but I want the next thing. It's helpful
yeah,
to have that mindset sometimes, right? Like not be comfortable where you are, but a lot of the times too, it's like understanding where you were and now knowing where you are. It's just being humble. I think is the biggest takeaway.
yeah. I mean, being able to work towards something, right,
Mhm.
is very important, but not to the point where you ruin where you're at. Because if you're say you're working like 14, 16 hours a day trying to be, better at what you do, um, but you lose, like you don't have any family time.
Right.
You don't play with your dog, you don't take him to the park, you don't
Yep.
anything like that. That's when it gets kind of like you're ignoring the blessings that you already have because you're so focused on getting something else. And it's okay
Exactly.
to have that span where you're like, hey, there's a goal I want to achieve. Let me go into a place for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I got to grind. But then when I come out, I know that I'm good once I
Mhm.
get that goal or once I achieve that goal. Um, and I feel like knowing the things around you that you have now, those are blessings. They're answered prayers. You know what I mean? And
Right.
I think that's huge. I really like your quote, by the way. That was awesome.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Dug a little bit for that one. I think it was
Yeah,
like an ancient Greek, I don't know,
yeah,
person, whatever. But I don't know. It was dope. I think it was pretty cool. Appreciate it.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I could. I never heard it, so when you said it,
Yeah.
I was like, I wasn't just like, oh yeah, I was like, wow,
Yeah. It
never
was
heard
dope.
that
I
before.
think that's something that me and my wife talk about often. It's taking things for granted sometimes.
Yeah,
Like the last, I think it was 2 weekends ago. I had a preseason game and she had a game with the Rays, and we both left at the same time. And we were walking down the steps, and I was just like, this is really wild. The fact that 5 years ago, if I would have told you that in 5 years we were both going to a professional sporting event, working for that professional team, that wouldn't even cross my mind. And we were walking
yeah,
down, and it was just like it's crazy that you're realizing your, I don't know, childhood dreams. Like
yeah,
I know it's a preseason game, and I know it's a game in the middle of the season for the Rays. They're like very inconsequential things, but it's more so like taking a step back and being like, this is the position that I'm in. Like however crazy it is, driving to the Super Bowl when we played here, and it was like I'm driving to work. I'm literally driving to work, where I go to work every single day. But I know when I get there, it's the biggest sporting event in the entire world. Like that's mind blowing. And
Yeah.
that's the reality of it. It's like, that's crazy that you can get to that point and just kind of like, sometimes you have to take a step back and be like, bro, this is wild. Like, this is crazy. No matter how many
Yeah.
times you can be like, I've been here before, or act like I've been there. It's like, sometimes you just have to take a step back and be like, this is really cool. Like, kid from Harrisburg, small city, and like, you're on the field of the Super Bowl. Like, that's bananas.
Yeah.
And I think people around me definitely have to be the ones that say, like, you need to take a step back. Like, you need to just think about what you're doing right now, because sometimes it's easy to get caught up in, like, oh no, this is just work. Like, this is what it is. Like, this is what it is. But not like this life is crazy.
Yeah.
And it's good every once in a while to take a step back and just look at it.
Yeah. Like, it's always like, oh yeah, I've been here, and then you kind of like open a door really quick, and
Yep.
you like scream like, whoa, like I'm here, and then
Yeah.
you come, you know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
Like, you
Yep.
got to be like, all right, but then it builds up, and you're like you said, you're like, wow, like I'm in the parking lot, in the staff parking lot, about to
Yeah.
walk into the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
that's the moment where I would probably as well be like, wow.
yeah.
And
Yep.
then you go inside. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And it was a Mickey Mouse Super Bowl in terms of the fact that there was nobody there. Like, there
yeah.
was way less people. But still, it doesn't take away the fact that, like, getting to that stage and being in that environment, like, they were covering it like there was a ton of people there. Like,
Yeah.
there was a bunch of people there, and it was still the Super Bowl. But like, for me, it was kind of just like realizing where I'm at, knowing where I'm at, knowing where my feet are. I think, going back to
Yeah.
what I was saying before, it's like knowing where my feet are, and knowing, even a year before that, I went to the Super Bowl in Miami, and I was like, next year I want to work the Super Bowl. Next year I
Yeah.
want to be working the Super Bowl. And I said that, like, whatever. I think that they were coming out onto the field. The team was coming out onto the field, and I was like, I said this to my wife, and I was there with my wife's dad, my father-in-law, and I was like, hey, next year I want to be here. And he works in the NFL too, and he was like, that's gonna be tough. Like, that'll be, if you're working for the team, awesome, but if you're working there with, just by yourself, like, that's gonna be tough. And the next year, we just so happened to make the Super Bowl, and I was working the Super Bowl. So it was like a dream realized, getting to that
Yeah.
that spot, getting to that opportunity. Um, didn't shoot it well. The moment definitely was. I felt the moment, but it was one of those things where it was just like, it was so wild. Like, it was crazy to be there, and to now look back on it, to go into my dresser and pull out the box with my Super Bowl ring in it, it says my name on it, all those different things. It's just very lucky. And you just have to know where your feet are, and always think about where you came from.
Yeah. Absolutely. I really like your story because there's a lot of points where you're like, this is what I want to do. And then you're like, oh,
Mhm.
it's inspiration because
Mhm.
you asked the world for something and it
Mhm.
delivered every time. And
Yeah.
it's just a testament to that specifically, that you can ask the world for what you want. You're like, hey, next year I want to be working the Super Bowl. Boom, it
Yeah.
happens. Um, so I feel like definitely laying out what you want to do is important, and saying what you want to do is important because
Absolutely.
that allows, the world listens to that stuff. God or whatever your higher power is listens to what you want out of life,
Mhm.
and just got to put the work in from there on out.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's something too. Like, you can ask everything, but if you're not putting in everything, you're not going to get it out. So, like,
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest part.
yeah. You can always control input. Can't always control
Yep.
output, but also don't complain about output if you're not putting in any input. Always got to
Exactly.
put input in. Yep.
You gotta make that. That's gotta be the quote. That's gotta be the quote right there. That's the biggest thing that people have to realize, I think, is like, you're yelling at the world and being like, this isn't fair, this isn't fair. It's like, the world will yell back at you and be like, you're not doing anything. Like, you're just
Yeah.
sitting there. Like, if you
Yeah.
don't get up off the couch, you're not going to get a job in X company that you want to get into. Like, you're not going to get that if you're
Yeah.
not putting in that consistent work and that consistent effort.
Yeah. I mean, like, I had my mind, I grew up around the gym. I grew up around football. I had all of these workouts. I knew what to do when it came to losing weight. I had all of the information,
Mhm.
but all of the information doesn't do you any good if you don't act on it and you don't do things with it.
Yep.
And that's with anything. And it's so funny because just a little bit of action, just a little bit of effort can start snowballing into more and more and more, but you need to at least take that first step because it's so
Mhm.
vital. It's so important. You need to, because that is your mind going, this is what I want to do, and your body following suit, taking that first step outside, sending that first email. That is all so vitally important.
No question. Yeah, I think, and that desire, going back to what you're talking about, like that desire to have that end goal, that desire to have that end effort, you have to put in those steps to get to there. I mean, like if
Yeah.
what it was, A plus B equals C. You're
Yeah.
going to get those results if you put in those first two steps.
Yeah.
Um, like I think I saw something that was like, if you want to, like for me right now, like I want to put on weight, like I want to gain weight, gain muscle. Where it's like if you want to gain muscle, you have to eat clean and stay in the gym. Like those are like the two things that you want to like. Eating a lot of food for sure, but like
Yeah.
you want to get that effort or you want to get that result. It's A plus B equals C,
Yeah.
and staying motivated. Maybe there's some other steps in there in the way. Having good people in your corner, all those different things. If you want to achieve your goals, that's always the
Yeah.
path. That's always what you need to do to achieve your goals. Um, but I think like that's like what you're saying that resonated with me. It's just like you have to stay consistent with it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I like that too. A plus B equals C. You may know A and you may know B, but until you add them together and you actually do them, you won't get C.
Never get
And
C. Yep.
yeah, that's awesome, Danny. Danny, it's been a pleasure talking to you, man. You have a lot
Absolutely,
of great
brother.
stories and a lot of great insight, man. And
Absolutely. Yeah, we're gonna have to stay connected because I feel like we had our paths in the beginning in terms of with the Barrelettes, but we gotta stay together. So
yeah,
that's awesome.
absolutely. I'd be interested even to see where you go. What are your next goals? What are your goals now?
I'm still trying to define them. I think that that's something that I'm constantly looking towards in terms of what that next opportunity will be,
Yeah,
whether it's down here, whether it's with the Bucks, whether it's elsewhere. Like just the next step. I'm always trying to find that next step. Um, so I don't necessarily have that next vision.
yeah,
It's still being played out right now as we speak. But yeah, I mean, you have to be always constantly writing your story,
yeah,
and I think that's what I'm doing right now.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for coming on, man.
Absolutely, man.
I would love to do a second episode with you. I feel
Oh,
like
no
that would be,
question.
yeah,
I'm down. I'm
yeah,
down. Hopefully, I have
absolutely,
some more stories, some news stories, some fresh stories for you.
absolutely,
The next time
yeah,
we talk too.
yeah, no doubt. That would be I'd have a great time doing that. And
No question.
is there any? I mean, I could drop all your socials in the description if you want me to. Then,
Yeah,
but
that works.
for again, thank you for being here, and for everyone listening, thank you for listening.
Absolutely.
Follow us on Instagram at excelcast_. Follow us on TikTok at excelcast, and follow us on Spotify. Do the Q&A down below, the poll down below. Also, we're on YouTube at excelcast. And as always, stay blessed and excel.